All right, here we go. So, steps to do this, obviously, would be to choose a preferred asset class. You can actually do this with multifamily. You could also do this with mobile home parks. You could do this with any type of asset class. I think I had somebody asking me yesterday if this is only for multifamily, and no, the answer is it's not just for multifamily. And as we discussed yesterday, you choose a singular area in the country to choose as your farming area in which you will be building your real estate investing empire, and then find out everything you can, obviously, about that area. The average rents for each unit, if there's a crime issue, which, does anybody know how to find out what the crime issue would be or problem in a specific area? The city would have the information, but it's usually easier to just call somebody at the police department, because they're going to know a lot more than you think. If you feel comfortable doing that. I'm not really big on calling law enforcement myself, but that's just a personal thing with me. And then, of course, the requirements for Section 8 housing. I always have students ask me this all the time. What are the requirements? And the answer is it does vary. Yes, it is a government program, but it's going to vary in different parts of the country. Does anybody know why this is? Different states have different requirements, different counties even have different requirements. So I can't give you the end-all be-all answer to how all of that works, because you just have to do the research for it. Thank you, sir. All right, so step 1, find your cash flowing properties, consider several areas. Look at loopnet.com, we've already talked about that yesterday, how close there is to 50 or more multifamily listings in that area. And run the numbers on as many properties as you can, but your focal point will be between that 5 and 24 units. Can you go over that, though? Yes, absolutely you can. But are you looking for the 200 unit? Does Monica mean by going over, all of a sudden it's 200 plus at that point? No, that's not what I mean. You can go slightly over. You might be going between 24 and even up to 80 units in some cases. Just depends on where you are. And then, of course, this is the other thing too, my biggest pet peeve when I have a student send me a cash flow evaluator and the asking price and purchase price are exactly the same. You know how there's 2 boxes? There's the non-yellow box and the yellow box. Well, the non-yellow box is supposed to be the figure that they want, the seller is asking for. The yellow box is supposed to be your offer price. And what is the problem when they're exactly the same? It means that you're not chiseling anything off. You're trying to give the guy or the lady, whoever owns the property, exactly what they're looking for. And is that what we do in this business? No, we do not. We do not. Oh, I just wanted to see what the numbers would be like. Well, it doesn't matter, because you're not even going to be giving them that. So why would you even waste your time figuring any of that out when that's not even going to be a probability? You're not doing it. They don't expect you to do it. A lot of people, you don't understand, they expect you to go down and negotiate, especially on investment properties. They expect that. So what do you think they're going to be doing when they list their price, their property? What do you think that they're doing automatically when they list the property? They increase it. Exactly. Thank you, sir, in the back. You're a lot more vibrant than the rest of us in this room. So if not, keep looking. Some areas don't work, okay? By the way, whenever you're trying to structure something with 100% LTV financing, I think I briefly covered this yesterday, but it takes a really strong cash flow to support that percentage, because you're putting no money into it. So as you know, for example, if you go to a car dealership and you put $5,000 down on a brand new car and you're buying it, obviously your payments are going to be less than if you went with the zero down plan, correct? Same exact deal here. So if you're trying to do 100% LTV, sometimes it's not going to work, especially when you're starting to get into higher points, higher interest, because of the different lenders you're going to be working with. So you have to take that into account. One of my favorite types of structures, which is something that Ron is going to be talking about later this afternoon, is the new 60-40. What the cool thing is about that is, even though you're going to be getting hit at the 60%, it's actually almost a better deal than taking the 100% LTV bond funding program. Why do you think that is? It's the interest. Remember what I told you when you actually do the figures on your cash flow evaluator, you actually have to account for 110%. So if you're having a hard time carrying the load at 100%, can you imagine what 110% is going to be on that property? It takes a really strong property to be able to make it work. But why would a 60-40 work even better than that?
Forward seller financing.
Forward seller financing, so couldn't you actually very well go with the lowest possible interest rate possible with the seller part? So yeah, you might be getting hit higher on the 60%, which is fine, but it's not 100%. That's the big difference. So the 60%, you're only paying on the interest on that 60%. You could even offer the seller, if he's desperate enough and he's willing to do the creative financing on it for you, a 0% APR on it, right? And would they go for it? Some of them will. I can't answer that for everybody on behalf of this, in this industry, but some of them will actually do it. And other ones will be like, oh, I'd like to get 3% just to at least get a little extra something, because you have to think about what the win-win is in this situation. Does everybody remember my most recent email blast where I was ripping apart one of my licensed real estate investing students? Who, she's gone to a couple of these events in the last few years, and I find that she's got a very acrimonious personality. And you can't have that and be in this business because nobody's going to want to work with you. You just can't. You have to be likable. And even if you're not likable, then how do you become likable if you're not? You take classes for that or something? But the problem is she's up there in age, so she's set in her ways and she's not going to change anything. But personally, I can't stand this woman, okay? It's out there. She's going to get the video. She's going to know now. But her issue, though, is that she didn't understand what the whole thing was on the seller finance, and how when you make this a win-win for the seller, it's actually more beneficial for them to hold paper. They're not giving their equity away. You guys understand that, right? So isn't it more beneficial if you were one day a seller and decided to do seller financing for someone else? How is it more beneficial?
Over time,
but you're actually getting more money. If you whip out a calculator and you're getting your whole selling price, right? You're getting your whole price that you want. It's just in pieces. You're getting the 60% up front. The 40% you're holding paper on, it's not like that 40% goes poof and disappears. You're just getting it over time. And so if you actually added that 40%, if say it's $1 million sale, that 40% is how much? $400,000, okay? You're still getting that. But in addition to that, because of the interest, you're getting actually more money. Plus you defer your taxes because you don't have to pay taxes on something that you didn't get from the sale yet. You pay future taxes. The government would love that, but beggars can't be choosers, right? So with this strategy, though, you're not going to be doing 0% occupied properties. They have to have some functioning, occupancy level there. So, for example, when you do your research, you find that your area will be able to support what you're looking at because you have at least 50 buildings, in this case 47. So you do an analysis. If anybody does not have the cash flow evaluator, this is the link you go to, but everybody in this room has it, right? Okay. So to analyze any properties for the cash flow, you need the asking price. I know somebody had asked me yesterday about what happens when there is no price, and the answer is you do what? You put something in there. Put something in there, and then you'll know whether or not the cash flow is going to work, and then you can balance your own cash flow evaluator. And now, if you don't know what the gross operating expenses are, the GOE, what do you do in that case? Because a lot of times these listings don't include all of that stuff. Exactly. I like to do 50%. If you don't know, then 50%. Because on those smaller buildings, in some cases, it's going to be less than that, and you're going to be having a higher cash flow as a benefit of that. So the types of properties, the size properties you're looking at, most of it is just a clean 50%. So if they give you the GOI, say the GOI is $100,000, then 50% of that would be $50,000 would be approximately what the expenses would be a year on that building. Very easy, right? Not including what? The mortgage. Yeah, no, well, I mean, that would just be the operating expenses of the property. The mortgage is on a different, if you've ever seen the cash flow evaluator, you have your itemized expenses, which is down here, and then the mortgage stuff is at the top. So it's not part of all of that, it's separated. Okay, so again, you do your forensic analysis of it to figure out exactly how much information you can extract from the listing. Yes, go ahead and send out an inquiry to the agent, because you'd be surprised at how quickly a lot of them will get back to you. Again, a lot of them are just barraged with inquiries all day long, and it's a lot easier for they're not even going to verify who the hell you are, they're just sending stuff back. So that's a plus, but it does take a couple days in some cases. I've gotten some back right away, but other ones I've waited days for. So you just start loading your information in, and then you figure out if the property can work. If you only have the net operating income, which a lot of these listings will have, is just a net operating income, the only thing that you need to make sure you fill in is what you're going to be offering on the property for the price. And then you immediately go to this screen here, which if you look at the tab at the bottom, net operating income, you could get approximately what you're looking at. Now this is based on an underperforming property. It's only 75% occupied. So if you think about it, it's not great making this under $700 a month on a property, but this is at a 75% occupancy. Remember I told you before that you're going to be building your own pro forma, correct? So you're going to be figuring out, okay, well, this is kind of a crappy, amount, but at least it's positive cash flow. And there's other things that you could look at doing to be able to boost that once you take the property over, including loading in more tenants, including possibly raising the rents, seeing what other value adds you could actually do to the property. Storage, on-site storage is always a huge way of making extra money on these properties. Another thing is laundry. A lot of people don't know that laundry, snack machines even, all this stuff makes extra money for your property. So you could do an analysis on that to figure out what the future value would be in 6 months to a year from now. So you check out some of the information. Everybody who lists these properties that are listing agents, they build their descriptions differently. Some of them will just pile everything in. Some of them you wonder how they even graduated high school, if they did, because everything's all lowercase and misspelled, and you're like, don't you have spell check in this? But some of them will hide the stuff in the description. And I've seen descriptions that are like this big, and you're just like, you're reading, and I have to now blow things up on my computer because my eyes are going out, so it's like at 150%, and I'm just like, what? And I'm getting a headache. So you have to go through and then take notes. It's like, okay, what am I seeing here? I'm seeing that they're one-bedroom apartments, they rent for $500 a month. Again, sort of buried in there. Studios rent for $400 a month. It tells you exactly how many of each. It tells you that there's laundry facilities on site. Doesn't specify whether or not it's paid laundry or not, but that would be something that you would do further research in. And then it gives you an itemization of some of the expenses. It actually gives you a lot more than a lot of the listings do these days. So you could utilize all that and pile it into your cash flow evaluator for your analysis, again, before you're even dealing with an agent at this point. And then because you're going to be farming a specific area, you're going to know by the percentage what the average percentage is going to be to operate a property of certain sizes. You're going to know what the average cost per door is supposed to be. You're going to know what the average rents are supposed to be. You're going to know everything. So when you do come up on that property that says listing or price not disclosed, you're going to know what it's worth immediately. Now you're starting to see one of the elements that makes it important to farm in one specific area of the country, correct? Because you get to know that area like the back of your hand, and maybe you haven't even visited that area once in your entire life yet. So again, you plug all of this information in. I like to have a thorough analysis because I run so many cash flow evaluators, and I end up naming them and putting them in a file. So I try to put in as much as I possibly can so that when I have to go back, because there's many times where I have to, the agent will finally get back to me in a week, and then I want to open up the cash flow evaluator to see what I did. I'll have an actual and a pro forma on that one property. And I want to know right away without having to dig through the listing and go back on LoopNet and all this other stuff to figure out exactly what the property is about. So that's why I try to load in the amount of units and all that other stuff, because I'm way too busy of a person to be trying to figure stuff out, and where did that flyer go, and you should see my desk, it's a mess these days. You know, and I'm digging through papers and all this other stuff. I don't want to do that. I want all of the information to be inclusive on this cash flow evaluator. And if I have to use the notes section, there's a couple of notes sections. There's actually a tab down here, and there's actually a notes at the bottom where you're typing in information that's in addition to what is, you know, something you might want to know or remember about the property when you go back to it. So the yellow boxes, as you could tell, are the critical boxes to make sure they're filled in. How many times have I received cash flow evaluators from students that have the default information still in there? What do you think of this, Monica? And it's got everything that's defaulted. $500,000, I believe, is what the gross operating income is as a default, as an example. And I'll get these, and what do you think of this property? And then there'll be $1 million as the default asking price. And it's like, did you fill any of this out? Well, yeah, I put the address on the top. Good cash flow, right? It's like, yeah, but none of these numbers count. They're my numbers, fake numbers. I don't have the magic wand, but I wish I did. Because I have limitations, it's upstairs, I have limitations on what I could teach you, and then if you simply do not have the common sense or the brain cells, that's where I stop. My limitation has been exceeded. Ron Espinoza, yes sir. Ron Espinoza, did you have a question?
No, I'm getting ready to this.
Okay. So, if you take a look at how we rebuilt it, just beyond the net operating income, yes, we have now a cash flow property. It's actually a pretty decent property. Do you think $2,600? Well, that's not a lot, right? But Paul was explaining yesterday on how some of my workshops and classes that I've done that he's gone to, I talked about the financial freedom point. How many of you are familiar with that? If you're not, I have a video set that's located on, I think it's on the front page, monicamain.com, like right there. There's 2 videos you can actually watch, and you can download the worksheets to actually get to your financial freedom point right on the website. And this is important because even though this looks like a small paltry amount, if your financial freedom point was, say, $10,000 a month, for example, this property would get you a quarter there, wouldn't it? So you start thinking differently about these deals. It's like, oh, $2,600, what the hell is that? No, this gets me a quarter of the way to my goal, is how the thinking process. So you only need this property and how many more to get your financial freedom point if it's $10,000 a month? 3 more. And that's doable, isn't it? As I explain to my students over and over again, you're not getting thousands of units to be able to do well in this business. You're only getting a handful of properties. So when students panic, oh, it's a recourse loan and it's going to go on my credit, and da-da-da-da-da, well, who cares? You got 4 of them on your credit. You didn't hit a wall. You can still invest if you want. And you're at your financial freedom point, and you can do whatever you want. You could quit your job. You do have the money to replace your current income to support yourself. So, cash flow analysis. If you have at least 5 out of the 10 deals that work, walk-in is nice, but I'm talking about having something in the pro forma area that's really going to be a nice property. It doesn't necessarily have to be walk-in. Yes, you do have to walk into a cash flow with this particular scenario because you don't want to walk into a negative. But like the property we were looking at before, we walked in and it was what, $667 a month or something, and then when we were done with all of the analysis on it, we were up, over $2,500 a month. Pretty good, right? So if half of the properties you're analyzing have really good numbers on them, then it's definitely an area that you want to continue pursuing. And then of course, you're going to be again focusing in on that 5 to 24 unit range, however you can, of course, go below that. Now, when you're dealing with any kind of, again, conventional funding, you're going to have to stay in the 85 to 90% or above occupancy level. However, when you're dealing with different types of creative financing, the property can actually be underperforming at any level. Even with the bond funding, I believe that they want stabilized properties, but it doesn't have to be at the regular lending threshold. Also with the 60-40, 60-30-10, I think they're coming out now with a 60-35-5. Which means it's like the 60-30-10, except it's a 60-35-5. So the 60-30-10 is when you actually put 10% cash down. 60-35-5 is when you put 5% cash down, yay! So that's actually, a little bit better for people that actually do have the 5%. And by the way, a lot of these properties are not as expensive as you think, because remember, we're in the 5 to 24 unit range. So we're looking at properties that are $10 million. No, some of these properties are going to be $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, and it's getting 5% a major ordeal. No, I mean, for most people, I talk to students who invest in these, if you want to call them investing, in these, I guess, gurus out there, these real estate gurus. Yeah, I just went to so-and-so's thing and I spent $30,000. $30,000? How come we weren't putting that in property? That would have been your 5 or 10% down on something like this. You know what I mean? So you can find that money for that guy. You could find the money for this stuff. Especially with the business credit, how you can extract the money off of your business credit, as I was explaining yesterday, with my no slides that worked. But you guys saw the umbrella, right? That was cool. Yeah, the titles. And by the way, like I said, I will have do you guys want the full PDF version of that, or do you want the abridged version? Because I have I'll do the full version, and then you could decide to shorten it yourself in your mind. How's that? Yeah, okay. Because I was actually only giving you the abridged version yesterday anyway, so I'll give you the full version for it's really interesting stuff. You'll know, based on what Nick presented yesterday, and the full version of that, you will know anything and everything you'll ever need to know about personal and business credit building. I don't want to say for the rest of your life, because that stuff does change every so often, but for at least a good 3 to 5 years. How's that? All right, so you have to structure the deal financially. I think we went over a little bit of this yesterday. And later on this afternoon, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this, because I know Ron Espinoza will be talking about this. But this is sort of what you're looking at structurally, how you're going to be financially structuring your deals. And again, before you're submitting any offer, don't you sort of have to figure some of this stuff out? You don't just submit an offer to somebody. I have so many students who are like, yeah, so I submitted an offer and they accepted it. I'm like, okay, so can you tell me a little bit about what was in the offer? Well, I told them I was going to put 20% cash down, but I don't have the money. What do I do? It's not, you don't know what I go through, do you? So it's like, okay, well, unless you plan on getting the 20% down with an investor partner or somebody, which you just sort of did it half-assed, right? Because shouldn't you have lined some of the stuff up before you put the offer in? So that's why you have to figure out the structure, because if you're going to do 100% LTV, because you don't have any money to do it, then at least know before you submit the offer, because you have a seller who's already excited that he's going to get 20% down, thinks you're a serious buyer, it's going to be an 80% LTV, and it's not going to work out that way, okay? So this is some of the stuff that is available. And I know somebody had asked me about the local banks and how some of them don't like out-of-state investors, and that is true for some areas of the country. Other areas it's not. I typically don't deal with banks at all. Does anybody know why that is? A lot of red tape. A lot of underwriting requirements, and so I typically use private money a lot of the time. A lot of the people Ron Espinoza works with. So that doesn't go under the bank category. But if you do find a relationship at a local bank somewhere, that's worth its weight in gold, and if you don't, you don't. Use the unconventional methods, if you will, like I do. So with 100% owner financing, I like to call it something called a short-term lease option. Don't ever go to a seller and say, I want you to do 100% owner financing, because you will not get any further in the conversation, okay? So now you just call it a short-term lease option. Basically, the owner acts as the bank. We used to have what's called a master lease agreement. I don't use those anymore. I typically just build in a clause on the lease option, which essentially says that you're going to be collecting all the rents from the tenants. That's all it says. It's nothing more complicated than that. And then you have what's called a private mortgage contract in place, where you have the terms and conditions of the loan that you have set up, which is not really a loan, but it's like a lease option. And you have the terms and conditions set up there. However, we're going to do things a little bit differently, which is why that's crossed out, and I'm going to explain that in a second. There's no escrow, no closing, and trust me, the second I'm done with this presentation, somebody's going to ask me about closing and the appraisal and all that stuff. Is there any of that stuff with this? No. No legal ownership, or so I thought, okay? Because I had my attorney explain something critical to me. Land trusts, but in addition to that, what I recently learned is in addition to land trusts giving you legal ownership, a really good ironclad lease option agreement will also give you legal ownership. However, according to the terms and conditions of the seller's mortgage company, you don't have legal ownership on that basis. So you have legal ownership in the eyes of the law. If you ever went to court, yes, you would have legal ownership. The only thing that would abolish that legal ownership is if you were in breach of contract. And usually when people are in breach of contract is why? They stop paying. That is usually the only reason why people would be breaching their contract. So as long as you're paying on it, and as long as the document is executed properly, which I'm going to explain in a second, it actually is pretty ironclad, but this is an alternative way of doing it. So again, you don't need any appraisal. You don't need to hire somebody for $5,000 to appraise the property. You know, again, if you're working in a specific farm area, shouldn't you sort of know what your property's worth anyway? There's going to be a balloon term at the end, and basically a balloon term means that you're essentially getting a new loan for the property. So I'd like to call it a refinance, but really it's not, because refinancing, you're refinancing a loan that you already have in play, right? This one is sort of a private loan, so it's a loan in play, but it's not really a legal loan. It's just sort of like an under-the-table contract. So at the end of your balloon term, which is typically 3 to 5 years, you will then, at that point in time, go out, get a conventional lender in play, and then close it. And that's when the appraisal will come in. And by the way, just to let you guys know, in commercial property, you never order the appraisal, ever, under any circumstances. So I don't want anybody asking me any questions about that. Do you understand? The bank or lender will order the appraisal. They have their own companies and individuals that they work with, that they trust, that they like to get reports from. So I've had students who, again, get my course, don't take it out of the shrink wrap, and then they were sending me an email in a panic. Oh, I don't understand, I sent out an appraiser and I paid $5,000 for it, and then now the bank's sending their own appraiser. Can I just tell the bank, no, no, you can't tell the bank anything. They have to send out their own people to do the appraisal. Do you understand? So you let them do that, all right? So when it comes time for you to actually go into closing mode and you go into escrow, then they will send somebody out. Property inspectors, who sends the property inspector out? The buyer does. Buyer sends out. And are they 100% necessary all the time? No. In fact, a lot of times I'll send out a general contractor instead. Some banks, of course, if you like that, that's cute, huh? Some banks, of course, will ask for, if they want, some of them have more strict criteria. A lot of the lenders we work with aren't that strict, but banks sometimes will want to see the property inspection report. And some of them will even go so far as to want environmental phase 1 and 2 reports. Does anybody know what those are? It's when they test the land and the dirt with, I don't know what they do, but they want to make sure. This is mostly for commercial properties, especially those that have had gas stations and stuff on it, where they could have had leaks, and they want to make sure that the soil isn't tainted and whatnot. But for typical multifamily, it's really not necessary. So, important legal tip, because I'm supposed to tell you this, not because I agree with this, but because I have to tell you this. When you put a property into land contract or land trust, you have to do it through a licensed attorney and the state in which the property is located. Does everybody get that legal disclaimer? That's on tape, right, Jess? The reality of the situation, though, is a lot of these attorneys are not familiar. If you have an attorney that's telling people to get an LLC as opposed to an S corporation, because they don't know the difference and they don't know any better, that's kind of scary if you think about it. And if you think that some of these attorneys are supposed to be more privy to how things work with basic LLCs and corporations, how do you think most of them are going to react to something like this? They're not going to have any experience in most cases on how to do this. So most of you in this room got the No Cash, No Credit course, right? It was mailed out last week for those of you that ordered it. You didn't get a chance to look through it, did you? I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see my presentation first, because I know most of you don't even open up the shrink wrap, and so I figured, well, if you're stuck here listening to this, you're going to have to absorb some of this information, right? However, in that course, you're going to have two different types of land trust. One's called the Illinois Land Trust, the other one's called the Virginia Land Trust. The Virginia Land Trust out of the two is the better, most ironclad out of the two, because they have fewer requirements on what's required. Trusts, like corporations or any other entity, have requirements on, board of directors meetings and all this other stuff, and there's fewer of those requirements with the Virginia versus the Illinois trust, which is why it's recommended to use that one, but that is actually part of your course materials. So, the good news, of course, I don't use the master lease agreement anymore. I don't think anybody should. As long as you build in an extra clause into your lease option contract, it should go without saying pretty much that if you're doing a lease option, you're taking over the property, right? But it's just an extra clause, so you don't really need that anyway, regardless of whether you use a land trust or not. So why land trusts are really awesome is that it gives you privacy of ownership. It's easy to transfer this. So even if, say you close escrow on something, right? And maybe it's even your personal property, your house. I'm actually working with Leah on this because she's going through this major thing with probate. Her mom had passed away, and then her brother was living in the house where the mom was living. And then something strange happened. He was out late at a store and walked between two cars, and somebody was speeding, and he hit him, and he died instantly. This was about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's just her and her brother Roy, who's in Arizona, who has to figure out this house. Well, now they're going through this major probate thing. Nobody wants to buy it because they don't want to go through probate and all this other stuff. And it's just like, I was telling her, I'm like, listen, for your own house, you might want to consider doing this, because she's got her daughter, and it would just make it a lot easier if you don't have to go through that whole probate process. So this actually allows you to circumvent that. So for those of you that actually do own your own house or own other property, you might want to do this anyway, this whole setup, because it allows you to circumvent the whole probate system. And of course, once you put a property into a land trust, you can actually have the recourse loan removed off your credit report, because there's now a different entity that is owning the property that's not you or your LLC. So it'd be whatever ABC trust that you have in place is what's actually on what's called a deed in trust. So it's actually changed from a grant deed to a deed in trust when you actually shift over. So you shift the two over, and then now you can go and you can actually pull that deed in trust and show, the credit bureaus, listen, this property isn't even in any of my name, my LLC's name. You need to take this off my credit report. This is, some of them will do it, some of them won't, because a lot of this is so complicated and over people's heads. They're like, well, obviously they're right. I'm looking at legal documents and it doesn't say anything. So it's a way of getting the recourse loans off your credit report. So how does this work? There's that umbrella again. This one's cuter though this time, huh? All right, so yesterday we were sort of talking about this. You have your S corporation or LLC in your home state. LLC should only be if you actually have a physical partner. Otherwise, it should be an S corporation. So for the gentleman yesterday who was asking about what to do with his current LLCs, the answer is you don't buy properties with your S corporation anyway, unless it's part of your entity in the LLC. See what I mean? So since, remember we had to have two people in an LLC, and isn't your S corporation a person technically? So you're never actually buying anything under the S corporation by itself. So when you were asking about how do I convert the LLCs to an S corporation, well, the answer would be you'd never do that, because you already purchased property under those, and you never buy anything under an S corporation anyway, not directly like that. So you have an LLC, number one, and again, you are one of the members, and your S corporation is the other member. And then you have a second one, and then ideally you get a second LLC, so then that way when you want to sell off your properties, it's a lot easier. However, in certain states where each LLC is going to cost you $800 and something a year, like California, it's not really a good idea to get separate ones like that for a bunch of small properties. Now for your larger properties, yeah, if your units are 60 or 80 and above, then you probably want to spend the $800 a year for it. But if you have a bunch of 5 or 6 units, I don't know that I would get separate LLCs, but that would be a personal decision on your part. As I was explaining yesterday, Michigan is so cheap to get an LLC. It's like 50 or 60 bucks. The reason I don't know the difference is because I know their S corporation or their corporation is one's 60 and one's 50. Okay, so it's a matter of $10 between the two. And then when you renew them, it's $25 a year. You can line those suckers up all day, you know. And then you could sell them separately when you need to. You do separate taxes, yes, it's more work, but when it's time to sell them, somebody needs to see that tax return. It's separated from all the other ones. See what I mean? And then, of course, you could also do this for your own, if you're doing single-family residence investments, your own personal home, you have other property, you could put it into a land trust at that point. So this is sort of how it's all set up. Is anybody totally confused yet?
Hi everybody, this is Monica Main and I'm a self-made millionaire, and what I'm going to do is actually show you how you can become a millionaire as well. Listen, I got started with something called real estate investing, which I know you've heard of, everybody's heard of it, over 20 years ago. And I promised myself that when I became successful, I would actually share this information with people for free. And so when I got started 20 years ago, I started the same way that a lot of people start. I started off with going to seminars by real estate gurus. I saw late night infomercials on TV. And I ordered all these products and found that none of them showed me what we call the nuts and bolts and how to do everything in the business. In fact, it didn't even show me how to get started. And so what I promised myself is that once I became successful, I would actually go out and share this information with people. So that's what I'm going to do. And so for those of you that have been really wanting to get started with real estate investing, especially what we call passive income real estate investing, which is the most powerful wealth building tool out there, and especially if you want to get started with no cash and no credit, then you absolutely must get this book. This is my book. It's a best-selling book called The Scratch Millionaire. You'll be getting this book for free. In addition to that, you'll be getting my brand new 2-hour audio series along with it that'll show you exactly what you need to do front to back to get started in passive income real estate investing. And you can also get into what we call aggressive income real estate investing as well, which is when you want to flip properties for cash. So you can get started in both passive income as well as aggressive income real estate investing. And this book and this audio series will tell you exactly what to do front to back. This actually includes more information than what you'll ever get in any of those guru courses that'll cost you hundreds and sometimes even thousands of dollars. In fact, everything that you'll learn in both this book and this 2-hour audio series is more than what you'll actually learn in some of those guru courses or seminars that you go to for 3 days and spend $3,000 to $5,000 for, and maybe even get 10% of this information if you're lucky. So I'm actually giving this to you for free. All you have to do is cover shipping and handling for me. That's it. That's all you have to do. And you'll learn absolutely everything you need to know to get started with passive or aggressive or both real estate investing with no cash and no credit. It'll show you how to use other people's money, because that's how the rich get richer. And let's face it, that's how the poor get poorer, is that they don't understand how to use these strategies and these techniques and how to use what we call OPM or other people's money. Do you think somebody like Donald Trump or any of those big-time multi-billionaires or multi-millionaires, do you think they actually go out and use their own money for down payments, for acquiring property, to do deals? No, they don't. They understand how to use OPM or other people's money, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, how all the rich do that, and how you can do that as well. Just because you're a little guy or just because you're the average Joe out there doesn't mean that you can't tap into these resources and tap into these strategies. You just need to know how to do it. And I show you exactly how to do all of that and more in this book, as well as this 2-hour audio series. You'll also get the special bonus reports that I have as well. Just scroll down through this website, you'll see those reports that you'll be getting as well on top of this book and this 2-hour audio series. So again, it's for free. Just pay for shipping and handling. That's all you have to do. And then go through all of this stuff. You'll actually learn how to do it, how to become a very successful real estate investor with no cash and no credit. And you have nothing to lose and absolutely everything to gain. This is Monica Main signing off. I'll see you at the top.